Okay, so good morning, everybody. Good evening, wherever you may be coming and viewing from globally, all over the world. I've got a really exciting call today with a very good friend, Eileen Dirom, and her story with her son, Traynor, today is, I'm sure, is going to really move you and provide you with a lot of information that is going to allow you to look into the world of the autistic spectrum and understand it a little bit more closely. Eileen is a really great friend of mine, and I was able to meet her through the journey of Dr. Ahrens and EMULIN. And Eileen comes with a very astute background within nursing. So Eileen's background is within the nursing. So if I read this correctly, you've got a Bachelor of Science in Human Performance and also a Bachelor of Science in nursing as well. So we have somebody here who has a wealth of knowledge, but also as a mother going through a mother's journey in regards to having a son that was diagnosed with autism. And just to give you some statistics before we give Eileen on, to bring her onto the call, just to let you know how much of a condition that this can affect a lot of lives. And unless it's your family, a lot of the time people do not realize just how much it affects people. So if we start looking at 1 in 54 children in the US, and this is statistics as of 2020, 1 in 34 boys are affected by it, and 1 in 144 girls. So it's predominantly more common in boys than what it is in girls. But they're pretty alarming statistics when you start looking at this condition. So I'm really excited to welcome Eileen, and I do want to say this right from the very beginning, just so that we know that we're not making any medical claims to heal, cure, or fix anything. So this is personally a story from Eileen. So welcome, Eileen Dirom. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yes, and thank you so much for inviting me on, Jackie. I'm thrilled to be here. A little bit nervous. I haven't done this for a while, but I'm super excited.
Well, I'm very excited, and I know that Dr. Ahrens, when we discussed about bringing you on board, was very, very honoured that you actually said yes to doing this for us, because your knowledge is beyond invaluable, as people will soon learn as they to listen to your story. So I know that you've just recently got married too, Eileen, so I wanted to congratulate you for that. I was lucky enough to be invited to watch your virtual wedding, and what a beautiful day it was.
Oh, it was a magical day.
Yeah. So Eileen, you live in Columbia, in Duncan, in Canada, British Columbia, I should say. And you know, I've known you for nearly 4 years now, and it's been, you know, we often say this, but you do really have diamonds of friends that you come across, and they are acquaintances, but they do become friends even though it's global. And this is one of the wonderful things about this industry, because you get to meet so many people from all over the world, and you definitely have been one of those people for me, and I'm very grateful. So without further ado, we're going to head into the autistic spectrum, and this is today's call. So Eileen, I'd like to ask you about, if you can just enlighten us a little bit and let us know a little bit of information about your professional and work environment, if you can just share that with us to start with, please.
Absolutely. So I graduated from my nursing program back in 1993. It was my second degree I completed, and knew at that time I wanted to follow through with the degree program, just so I would have the background of the science that really inspired me to move forward to become a nurse. Probably, I spent a couple years in the hospital and quickly moved out to the community. I knew that's where my experience and life experience in the Cowichan Valley would work best, because I understood the lay of the ground. I understood what people needed in the Cowichan Valley. So that's where I sort of seated myself back in '95 and have been there ever since. I started working with the senior population around the same time, and not too long after starting on that journey, I decided I needed to get my gerontological nursing specialty, and have maintained that ever since. And it's an exam that you have to write with the Canadian Nurse Association. Lots and lots of studying beforehand. I actually wrote the exam once, wasn't able to get all the assignments in on time. So did the exam a second time 5 years later. And since that time, I've maintained it because there's no way I'm writing any more exams in my lifetime. I've had the privilege of working with seniors. I absolutely adore my seniors. And in the last 11 and a half years, I've been working with seniors on with mental health issues, in particular, seniors diagnosed with dementia, neurocognitive disorders, and dementia or depression and bipolar and that type of thing. And I work very closely with families, helping them in their home, determining what types of services they need. The team I work with is a team of specialists. I work with 2 geropsychiatrists, gerontologists, a nurse practitioner, 4 other nurses, a social worker, and a occupational therapist. So our assessment's very thorough. I typically spend no less than 2.5 hours with a client while I'm doing my assessment, and then I write that up and send it off to the general practitioner to help give them some direction on what needs to happen in the home moving forward. So I get the opportunity to really get to know my client's story. And as a nurse that specializes with seniors, that story is so important because that's what provides individualized care. And that's the focus I bring to the table. I'm also a really strong advocate, and I think I can really give my son the credit for teaching me that role, because I was outside of my comfort zone for a long time. But now if I see a purpose and a reason to get to a place, I'm going there, and I'm going to make sure that my clients get to go there and get what they need. So that's kind of the background. I can't believe I've been working as a nurse for 27 years and continue to concentrate a lot of my time listening to the Broken Brain series and trying to understand the root cause of illness, mental illness, neurocognitive disorders, and just working super hard to try to find where we can go to make things better for people.
So Eileen, I think that's what makes you so unique and so special, because you genuinely care about people, and that has always come across from, you know, the very first moment that I met you, that you really do lead with your heart and with a lot of passion. So, you know, as we move forward with this, you know, the next thing that I would like to ask you is just in your own personal opinion, if you can just give a very brief overview about the autistic spectrum in your own thoughts. If we can just have a really small, brief opinion, that would be great.
Absolutely. So Jackie, you already mentioned some of the statistics, and it is astounding, the statistics that are out there. They say generally about 1% of the world population is under the spectrum. And that's a big number when you start adding it all up. In Australia, it's between 1 in 100 to 1 in 70. In the US, as you mentioned, it's 1 in 54. And what's interesting is when I started on this journey back when we were questioning what was happening for my son, so he was born in 1998 or 96, there was not a lot of information about autism back then. And at that time, like in 1990, it was 1 in 500 that were being diagnosed. And in the year 2000, it was 1 in 250. So it was kind of an unknown entity when I first started on this journey. And, you know, overall, boys are 4 times more likely to have ASD than girls. And in general, the rates are overwhelming. And I'm super curious as to why. We have to ask that question on an ongoing basis, and we can't let it go, because it does impact families greatly. It impacts services, and it impacts these young individuals moving forward. And but I also want people to know that it's not this sentence that is undoable. Like, you can, if your child's diagnosed with under the autism spectrum, there's some really crappy days. Don't get me wrong. I lived those crappy days, but I'm to a place now with my son at 24, magical. We have a magical relationship, and he's probably the best person I know out in this world.
Oh. So Eileen, as we head into this, because you'll be able to expand onto that when it comes into speaking about Traynor, but can you just give us a little bit of information in regards to, again, just a brief overview in regards to what are some of the challenges that families face when they have a child within their family that's been diagnosed with autism?
Right. Well, I mean, first we need to understand that, autism spectrum disorder is a brain development condition. It impacts the brain, impacts how people perceive and socialize with others, causing problems in social interaction and communication. So communication issues are huge with these individuals that are under the spectrum. They quite often can't read cues from other people. They don't understand what they're being asked to do. And they get into this period of total disarray. And when their brains are, the way I describe it quite often is women can relate to this, when you're in that severe PMS, that's how my son's brain was all the time. He just did not know how to deal with things coming in at him, and he was overstimulated with even a dog barking 4 blocks down the road. So it's important to remember that there's a huge range of symptoms from very mild to very severe. And so some clients can be nonverbal and require full assistance with all of their personal care, their feeding, all their activities of daily living, and all their activities of just being out in the general population. And then others can actually go on, finish school, get a degree, actually find the next vaccine maybe. But they still have difficulties with relationships. And if they don't find that special person that can really understand that, they may never be successful in a relationship. And so I've met people right across the spectrum, and I actually have 2 individuals in my family, my son and my niece, that are very, very different within the spectrum. My niece is nonverbal, my son is verbal. My niece needs full-on care, and my son is fairly independent in several aspects of his life.
So
it's broad.
So, Eileen, as I understand it, it's just changes a whole family's life, and it really takes it in a different direction. That there are constant daily challenges, if not hourly challenges, to be able to try and navigate through. But if we do head into a mother's personal journey, which is yours with Traynor, would you be able to share with us what was life like for Traynor prior to actually taking EMULIN? Like, what was his life like for you on a daily basis?
It was an interesting journey, let me tell you. My son was born August 21st, 1996. And when doctors look at what's going on for your child, they want to know how was the delivery, how was the pregnancy, all of those things. It was a fairly normal pregnancy. It was a tough delivery, but there was no medical interventions that were needed. He was born healthy. He, nursed easily, but there was something off with him. There was always something off. His neurological system was very immature. Many of you have seen babies have the startle reflex. My child would have the startle reflex while nursing 10 to 12 times, like he was going to jump out of my arms. So there was always something a little unsettling with my son, but he met all of his milestones in his first year. It was around when he was 14 and a half months old, when he stopped nursing, that he started losing the words that he had gained. So he didn't have a lot. He probably had about 8 to 10 words that he used regularly, but he started losing those words. And I was expecting my second child, and 4 months later I had her. And it became very evident how he couldn't deal with the transition of having a new baby in the home. The words became less and less. We actually had him tested for hearing deficits because it was almost like he was becoming deaf. And at the age of 2, he started having interventions with a speech therapist, and they were trying to teach him words and make sure that his oral development was developing properly, and that they're playing games with him and trying to really work with him. We are, unfortunately, because of his behavior, at this point, the behavior was escalating, and he was such a frustrated little boy. We were being fired from almost everybody that was working with him because he was wrecking everything that they had, that they were presenting to other children. And it was an amazing challenge. It was extremely challenging for my husband at the time, my ex-husband, and it wasn't that long after he became my ex-husband, because he just couldn't deal with the fact that we had this child that demanded so much attention. And by the time he was 3.5, he started having seizures, which became the focus of his care for some time. But around the same time, there was this elderly psychiatrist that was working with us that gave me this paper that asked me a bunch of questions about autism. It was the first time I'd ever heard the words autism. And I looked at the paper and I just thought, not for me, not looking at this right now. My son has other medical issues. And at that point, they were trying to determine whether they were going to do surgery on his brain. And we were being told that he had this condition called Landau-Kleffner and potentially would end up being a vegetable for the rest of his life. So not my focus. So moving forward, we were finally, after tons and tons of medical assessments, the team finally decided at the age of 8, so we're talking 4 years later, he was under the autism spectrum. And the positive at that point wasn't that we had a diagnosis, but we finally got some funding. So he was able to access some services that we couldn't access previously. And as a single mom, that was incredibly important because I couldn't afford much more coming out of my pocket. And so we went on you know, that journey for a bit. The daycare he was in wouldn't allow him to stay unless he had a one-to-one person staying with him because of safety issues. He would, you know, hold things together out in the community, but walk across the threshold of our door and have meltdowns. And unfortunately, my daughter started becoming the target of that. She was 18 months younger than him. Teenage years were brutal. My son was growing at a very quick rate. He's now 6'4", and he's not heavy. He's only about 155 pounds, but he's 6'4" and wiry. Well, he was about 6'3" in his teenage years. And it got to a point where I actually had to ask the Ministry of Children and Family for British Columbia to take him into their care. And at that point, we were told that he was going to need to move from the Cowichan Valley, where we live, about an hour away. And I was not going to allow that to happen. I found the strength to get many people in the surrounding area to help us fight, and we kept him in the Cowichan Valley. And I was able to get 4 hours or 4 nights of respite for him every night or every week. So he did that. He went to a different home every single night for the next 5 years, or every 4 nights a week for the next 5 years, where he was in, and in that 5-year period, we never lost a caregiver. Everyone stayed with us. They all love him dearly, and he is still their best of friends. You know, he still spends time with each family as a visit. They'll come and take him out for dinner, or my one girlfriend takes him bowling, and it's just magical. But anyways, just imagine 5 years, this kid who is under the spectrum went from home to home. Very difficult time.
Eileen, as a parent, I know, and knowing you, I know that this is tearing you up inside, and this is the beauty of this in regards, when I say beauty, it's the surrealness of it, that having to relive it, and as you tell your story, you actually are reliving it. And I hope everybody, and I'm sure they are very aware of the power of this story, and the gratitude that we have for you for sharing this with us at this stage, because it's a difficult thing to talk about when you're speaking about something that is still so raw, and when you relive it. So
it's powerful. It's amazing. I think I am okay with it, and then you relive it, and the trauma is still there. It's embedded, but it's still there. But it's been a positive journey too, because we've moved from that place that police needed to be involved, he needed to be out of the home, to a place where he's no longer needing that.
So Eileen, as Traynor's gone through, and I've been, you know, even fortunate enough to see his journey since he started with EMULIN. So what has life been like for Traynor since he started EMULIN? Like, what have you noticed that has altered for him from what it was like for him throughout his life? You know, from the age of 20, literally, to when he started with EMULIN. What sort of changes have occurred for him from your personal opinion, from a professional opinion, but also more importantly, as a mother, as his mother?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting thing to watch, because we talk about, you know, people taking things, and if they believe enough, they can make a change. It's a placebo effect. Well, with my son, he didn't understand any of that. So when I started giving him EMULIN, the changes were subtle initially. He also had a lot of other positive things happening at the same time. So I couldn't say for sure that what was happening was due to having this new supplement on board. But what I did notice, and which was very clear, is his diet changed. He no longer craved carbohydrates like he used to, and he was a carboholic. He started choosing salads and meats for his dinner instead of having all the carbohydrates like potatoes and rice. So spaghetti used to be his favorite food, no longer his favorite food. He used to eat bowls and bowls of ice cream. If we didn't hide the ice cream on him, he'd finish the whole bucket. He doesn't hardly finish a bowl of ice cream any longer. And he did not make these choices because he chose to. His body no longer accepted those choices into him. And so that was one of the first things that we really noticed. And then moving on, his behavior was more settled, but I couldn't really contribute that to EMULIN at the time. As I said, he was in a more stabilized setting. He was living in a trailer at this point with my niece. They had regular caregivers, a regular program. He was happy. He was feeling really comfortable in his own skin. But then, Jackie, we ran out of EMULIN for a bit. And there was a 2-week period where my boy did not have his EMULIN, and he really struggled. He became aggressive and angry. He was confrontational. We hadn't seen that in years. He had more difficulty understanding. He was more perseverative in the way he talked. He actually became violent with one of our caregivers, and it brought me back to a place where we had been in his teenage years. It was so frightening to be back there. After a 2-week period, we were able to get some more EMULIN, and when it arrived, I'll tell you, it was like Christmas. We rushed over there and he got EMULIN into him right away. Within 4 days, my son said, "Thank you, my brain feels better. I am no longer feeling angry."
Sorry.
It was so freaking powerful, because I knew nothing else had changed for him except he was without his EMULIN at that point. And so to me, it was a powerful testimony that he will never be without EMULIN again. I will go all over the place to make sure I have it. I'll tell you that much. And I will go without before he goes without.
Eileen, can I actually ask you something while we're in this space right here now? You know, with a child or a young person that is diagnosed with autism, and this is their world, there's such honesty with what comes with them, with their personality. So there's no manipulation of trying to, you know, manipulate a parent into trying to tell them something. Am I correct in thinking that, from what my understanding and knowledge of this is that there is a rawness in their honesty? So what happens to them both physically and what they express themselves verbally is factual and is just sheer honesty. Is that correct?
Absolutely. He doesn't know how to lie. It's pure honesty. It's pure. He actually says to his caregivers, if they're complaining that they're not feeling well or something, you need to take EMULIN. And we laugh because it's so funny, but he's like, you need to take EMULIN. The kid does not, now he's 24, but he does not get sick. He doesn't have colds. Yes, he still has autism. Yes, he still has sensory issues. It hasn't changed all that, but he feels better. He feels healthier. His immune system is functioning better than it ever has. And he used to always get the sniffles. He doesn't get them now. He sleeps better. his acne is cleared. That was the other piece, that he had horrific acne, and his acne is cleared. The list goes on, and it, yeah, he needs his own commercial. Somebody said, absolutely, he would do it now too. He's so brave. And this is where it's so important, because it has really brought me to this place in understanding autism and inflammation. And there's research that's showing that there's an inflammatory component for some autistic syndrome conditions that people have. And as there is with neurocognitive changes when somebody has a dementia. So this is where a product like EMULIN, who works to target the inflammation in your body and reduce the inflammation and improve immune function, makes a difference. And I think we're absolutely seeing that with my boy.
So Eileen, I just want to ask you to share this, because I remember this reduced me to tears. There's two areas that have reduced me to tears with Traynor's journey. Your wedding a few weeks ago was one of those, and what he was able to do to be able to walk his mother down the aisle was, you could see that he really was holding it together, and then it was just so overwhelming. It was like, get me out of here. And you could see that he did such a great job, and it was just, I was crying watching your wedding at that particular moment, because I knew just how far that he had traveled. But the other moment that I really want to share with you and get you actually to bring up and get you to share, I remember you posting about him having his very first athletics carnival, where he was able to go out and participate in an athletics carnival with other kids. Can you just enlighten us a little bit on, or tell his story about that, because that made me cry.
Oh my goodness, I can't even remember that one. Give me another hint, Jackie, because I'm struggling to read. He's had so many lately.
This would have been about 18 months ago, 12 months, 18 months ago, and it was, you'd taken him to an athletic carnival, and you were talking about that he could never do this before, because his ability to be able to socialize and be comfortable in a lot of people around him that were different people, that he had the skills to be able to manage that and get through that and actually enjoy it, and he participated.
And he's been doing that in so many different avenues, where in the past he would not be able to socialize with others. Now he has no problem going up and shaking someone's hand and saying hello and looking them in the eye and having a conversation with them. He maneuvers himself around many different avenues. Now he does get overwhelmed quite easily, and this is what happened at the wedding, when too many people started showing up. And we kept the numbers down. We were doing the COVID-friendly wedding and had 50 people. Or 44 people. We weren't allowed to have more than 50. And as soon as the pretty girls showed up, he couldn't handle it. There was too many emotions for him. And he decided he was going to vacate and take his damn tux off, is what he said. I'm taking this damn tux off. Anyway, he agreed with me that he would get me to Dave, my husband, and he walked me that distance, shook Dave's hand, turned around and left and went to get the damn tux off. It was quite powerful, but he did his job. And he's definitely, Jackie, become more comfortable in his own skin. He doesn't feel like his sensory system is not on fire like it was. And I contribute that to inflammation too.
Yeah, look, Eileen, with your background, like your professional background, this is where, and not only that, but as a mother, but understanding it professionally as well, this is where, we are so grateful. But what for the information that you're providing, and also for sharing Traynor's journey, because it's a personal journey. So it's a big thing to share something like that with others. But it certainly helps a lot of people to think that there is hope out there, that there is an answer that they may not be aware of. So what I did want to ask you, we discussed this too, was, and people have asked through the chat too, daily doses and any variations in regards to what you're giving Traynor with EMULIN, and if there are variations, why? Like, what is his daily routine for him with EMULIN?
Yeah, it's a good question. With Traynor, back in 2017, when we got him back on the EMULIN, he was on 4 capsules a day for probably about 6 months. And then I started weaning him back to 3 and then down to 2. When I had him down to 2, it became evident that he needed to go back up to the 3. And the reason for that was, one, the acne. His acne started showing up again. And at the 4, his acne was his face totally cleared up. But it also, as we know, EMULIN's a little bit expensive. So I wanted to make it cost effective and get the most for him as possible. And so at 3, he seems to be the most stable. He feels good. His skin is good. Yeah. I don't think I need to go up with the dose, but you kind of get a sense, and those that have been on EMULIN, you kind of get the sense the days that you need a little bit more, or you're good with the dose that you're on. And I know Jackie can attest to that as well. And I kind of follow Traynor's lead. If he's feeling like he's getting a little bit run down, then I'll pop it up again, and just to make sure he has that extra support with his immune system. And
so Eileen, is it EMULIN M that Traynor's taking?
Yeah, Traynors use both interchangeably, but the M is the preferred one for him.
Okay.
He doesn't have any blood sugar issues, so that's, and the inflammation seemed to be a really big piece of his picture, so that's why I've kept him on the M.
Okay. So, this is where it's exciting, knowing that down the track, looking at what the future holds with what Dr. Ahrens has available and what he's looking to bring into people's lives and families' lives too, is a little bit exciting too as we do progress forward. But the last question that I would like to ask you, Eileen, as we did discuss with this, is, what would you like to say to parents that do have a family member that has autism and they haven't yet been exposed, or they haven't started using EMULIN? What would you like to say to them in regards, and bearing in mind we are not healing, curing or fixing anything, just as to what your personal opinion is as a mother, but also as a professional medical personnel, what would your message be to those people that listen to this later?
Well, I think it's an interesting question, Jackie, because as a parent, there's so many products that are put towards us to say that you need to try this, you need to try that. This is the magic bullet. This is the magic bullet, and it can be totally overwhelming. I know as a mom, for me, trying EMULIN, as soon as I had tried it and felt the differences it made for me, there was no question I needed to get this into my son. As a nurse, I needed to have a bit of medical background, the scientific background. I looked up quercetin, I looked up myricetin, I looked at chlorogenic acid. I wanted to know what those particles did and how they impacted the body before I put it in him. So I was in a bit of a mixed world there, but I have no qualms saying to anyone, it is worth a try. If you can get this into your child, you will see some benefits, because we know EMULIN will help reduce inflammation. We know it will get to the root causes of some of the challenges people are having. We know it will improve immune system. So it will support it. To me, it's a no-brainer, but I also know that people are fearful and people need to understand what's going on, and they need support around that. And I think the biggest factor is we see the research, we know EMULIN is not going to harm you if you take it. And if anything, it will improve something in your body. And sometimes it's not what we even think we're targeting.
Look, Eileen, there's one area that I did want to touch base with you, and we will finish this up. Can you please, and you can say, no, I don't want to answer this, but what has the relationship been like? Because I know Abby, your daughter, I understand, how did this affect her, with Traynor? Because from speaking to you and understanding and knowing what you have told me, prior to taking EMULIN, the relationship between brother and sister, and then post taking EMULIN, the relationship between brother and sister was a huge difference in lifestyle and what was happening for both of them, but no more than what it was for Abby, your daughter. Can you just give us a little bit of enlightenment there, because I'm sure other people are struggling with this as well?
Yes, any family that has siblings where there is a child that is under the spectrum, and then you have a neurotypical child, there are significant challenges. Unfortunately, in our situation, my son was very aggressive and reactive towards my daughter, particularly in her teen years, because she was having challenges with her own emotions, and he would be reactive to that. Since he's moved out, since he's been on EMULIN, their relationship is totally rekindled. And she was actually one of the caregivers in his home. And I was so shocked when she asked if she could be, because they couldn't be in the same room together for probably 5 years. So she was one of his caregivers until she went off to her nursing program. And this, almost 3 weeks ago, when Dave and I got married, Jackie saw this in the video. My daughter is standing up front with me, and she is waving at her brother, getting him to come to her so he can get me to Dave. And then there's other photos where she has him up in the bushes doing yoga stretches and deep breathing with him to calm him, because it was so overwhelming. Their relationship become magical. They now understand each other better, and she's gained a skill set to do that as well. But she's not taking his behavior personally, and she's using her sense of humor that brings him around. And I am just so grateful that my kids love each other once again. They never stopped loving each other, but you know what I mean. It's magical.
It's quite a challenge.
I know when I leave this world, he has an advocate still.
Eileen, look, it just, I had to stop myself from crying because I've got goosebumps because, you know, watching him again through this journey. You know, we've interviewed you before previously as well. So knowing how far that Traynor has actually progressed through this period, and understanding that this has had a huge impact on his life. So as we said, we're not curing, healing, or fixing anything here, and it's worth a try, you know. And if it makes a huge impact, you know, most conditions are inflammatory based. And so, but, you know, when we're looking at such a condition like the autistic spectrum, where it does vary for a lot of children and adults as well, it can be soul destroying for the individual themselves, but it can, as unfortunately you've experienced, it can change the dynamics of a family in not such a great way. And it's an emotional journey that you would not wish upon anybody. So I really want to thank you, Eileen. And I do want to say to people that if you do have questions, we would rather try and stay compliant here. And so please, I've put it in the chat line, that info@drjosephahrens.com. Please refer your questions to there so that we can stay compliant and protect EMULIN. But is there anything that you'd like to finish off as a lasting gift to people, Eileen?
I would just like to say my life has forever changed since meeting Dr. Joe and getting an understanding of EMULIN and how it can actually make a difference for people in their lives. And I am so appreciative of the science that's behind this. And I appreciate how we need to stay compliant. And I'm open for questions if people want to send me messages, if you'd like me to speak to family members, whatever it may be, I am open for that. I'm just one person, one voice, but I have lived this journey and I've come out of it. I can't say unscathed because it's been tough, but I am so fortunate that I have my son in my life. He's the most amazing person, as I mentioned previously. I have a beautiful family, and I'm forever grateful because we're better now than we've ever been.
Eileen, thank you, my friend. And I really do mean that from the bottom of my heart, straight into yours, because sharing something like this really does unearth anybody's emotions. And I'm watching people through here that it's shifting them as well. And I hope that people can share this story. Please, as I said, send any sort of information that you want or you have questions to ask through to that email that I gave you. Ask in Dr. Ahrens' webpage, because we can direct the questions through to Eileen as well, to be able to do that. But I want to thank everybody, but no more than Eileen. Thank you so much, my friend. I really am so grateful that you're able to share as a mother, as a professional woman as well, letting us into your family's life. And no more so than letting us into Traynor's world, because it's very personal to be able to step into somebody else's life like that. So I really thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for that. Next week, we've got a really great topic too. Dr. Ahrens is back next week, and we're going to be talking about arthritis. So it's an area that affects children. You know, from a very young age through to all ages arthritis. So I think that's going to be a really great call as well with Dr. Ahrens. But Eileen, thank you so much. I love you from the bottom of my heart. I know that everybody else is very grateful for what you've provided for us today. And I look forward to speaking to you personally, but I look forward to each week as we progress with this, and just to provide better health through knowledge with Dr. Ahrens and people that we bring on board. And if I can ask just one last thing of people, please keep your eye out on the page, invite people into it, because it is for everybody. It's an educational space, that's why it's been provided there. So feel free to invite your friends, even if they aren't involved in Valentis. It's about sharing the wealth of knowledge of what is out there to offer to people to change their lives. But also we're going to be looking for testimonials. So if you do have a powerful testimonial that you're happy to share, please reach out and let me know, because we're going to try and do one of those every 4 to 6 weeks, and bring in 2 or 3 people and share, you know, 2 to 3 testimonials to be able to get the power of the word out there for people as well. So I want to thank everybody. Thank you, Eileen, so much for sharing Traynor's story, Abby's story, and yours as well, as you've gone through. And thank you, everybody, for joining us, and for those who watch it later on afterwards. And we look forward to speaking to you and seeing you next week. Thank you, everybody. Bye.